But first, I just want to give you guys a wonderful representation of what you can like expect from when you were to go to someone's house for a barbecue. For instance, if you were to come to like my house for a barbecue at the Marum household, there are a lot of cool things you're going to see. Okay? First off, you're going to see this right here. A wonderful looking steak sizzling on the grill. But guess what though? If steak isn't your thing though, there's other things that I'm going to offer you as well. When you come to that house, I'm going to have a steak. I'm not just going to throw it on the grill and call it a day. We're going to put some nice seasoning on that steak. And what I mean by that is, get a nice spice rub, salt and pepper. There's going to be a lot of flavor on that steak. In addition to that, if steak isn't your thing, like if you're a vegan, vegetarian, if you're into chicken, if you're into pork, any of those things, I'm going to ask you first, before you come to my house, what you're interested in. What would you like to eat? I'm going to make sure that happens. So, after that, what goes really well are fixing too. You're not just going to get a steak. You're not just going to get a piece of chicken. You're not just going to get like a veggie burger. You're going to get some fixings as well. You're going to get like mashed potatoes. You're going to see some corn on the table. You're going to get the whole gamut over here. It's going to be an amazing feast. And what goes well with all these things too is you're going to get some nice cold beverage. Okay. I wanted to make sure this was high school appropriate, so as you can see, we have some choices here. That steak is going to go wonderfully well with one of these beverages, and if you happen to be over 21, maybe some adult beverages as well. That's what you can expect when you come to our house for a wonderful barbecue. And let us not forget, afterwards, you get this nice looking cake. You get some dessert, okay? You're going to get a steak. You're going to get a veggie burger if you'd like. You're going to get these wonderful side dishes. You're going to wash it down with some wonderful beverage that you'd like. And to top it off, icing on the cake. You're going to get some dessert also. It is going to be like a theatrical performance. There's going to be a lot of moving parts. There's going to be sights, sounds, music in the background. It's going to be an amazing thing. That is what you can expect when you come to our house for a barbecue. But unfortunately, sometimes, when we see an education, and I'm not saying here, by the way, here in our district, we have wonderful, wonderful educators, amazing educators. In the state of Rhode Island, amazing teachers, very passionate about what they do each and every day in their classrooms. But across the nation, with some teachers, we serve this to our kids. A piece of unseasoned, uncooked, raw piece of steak. We plop it down on their desk and we say, hey, take that and you're going to eat it. There's no seasoning on that steak. It wasn't cooked. It wasn't put on the grill with those nice grill marks or anything. It didn't come with any fixings. Nothing fancy around it. Nothing to drink. Who goes to a barbecue and doesn't have a drink, right? And then no dessert afterwards. That's it. So again, this is happening across the nation where we're just forcing maybe some of the content that teachers across the nation are forcing their students just to sit, put their hands underneath on their desk, don't talk until you're spoken to. We're forcing some of this content on them. And that's unfortunate because we have different learners right now from way even back 20 years ago. So what we want to be able to do is, how do we get from something where we're not forcing them to eat a raw piece? Who serves a raw piece of steak, right? That's unheard of. So what I'm thinking is, how do we get back to something where we have this theatrical performance where we might be able to reframe and reposition the ways in which we create wonderful lessons for our students. Lessons that we can engage them in. Lessons that we can empower them to have that intellectual curiosity, to persevere, to keep on exploring and discovering content of which that we need to convey to them, but yet get them so involved and wanting so much more. And there's like two questions that Dave Burgess asks educators all across the world, especially here in America. And the first question is, if your students didn't have to be there, would you be teaching in an empty room? That's the first question. And what I mean by that is, like, if attendance was not compulsory, if they didn't have to come to class, if they weren't disciplined for missing class, would they still come? Is what you do as a teacher so drawing them in to that classroom, almost as if it was like a magnet, drawing them into that room? Is the things that you do in your classroom so out of this world, so crazy, so unique, so innovative, that they're just automatically drawn to that classroom? And the next question that Dave Burgess talks about, by the way, he's also the one that made that steak analogy, that barbecue analogy about serving raw steak to our kids instead of jazzed up barbecue time. This is the next question he asks. Do you have any lessons that you could sell tickets for? I'm thinking, like, wow, like lessons that I could sell tickets for? I don't know. That's a great question to ask, though. Like, granted, teachers across America are inundated with so much paperwork. They have so much other commitments too, and sometimes their hands are tied on what and potentially how they teach material as well. But with that said, though, we might be able to reimagine what our American classrooms could look like across the nation. There are ways in which we can think about how to reframe and reposition the ways in which we teach our content. Matt Miller recently talked at the Future of Education Technology Conference, and that was down in Orlando, Florida. And during his keynote, he acknowledged and made this statement. He said, the world is changing. The workforce is changing. Technology, it changes every second. But our students are changing as well. Now, he made this very, very big, bold claim afterwards, and I was kind of taken aback by this next claim. He also said, education, by and large, is not changing. And I was like, nah, that's BS. That is not true, because there's amazing things that are happening all across America. There's amazing things happening here in this district where teachers are embracing meaningful integration of technology, reframing, repositioning the ways in which they convey their content. But unfortunately, I think, by and large, though, is what he means by this is maybe we need to do a better job convincing teachers across the nation ways in which they can promote and re-engage their students. And I don't mean like just engagement. Like in the teaching world, they talk about this word engagement. We want engaged learners. We want engaged learners. I think it's all about empowerment. I think I want an empowered learner, one that's intellectually curious to persevere through future activity. Ones of which that are coming in to your classroom wanting to learn more. We have definitely different learners in our classrooms. We have a lot of like distractions. Like this could be a distraction for students, for children. But now, what if we were to ask ourselves, how can we turn this distraction into something that's like a meaningful thing in the classroom that we can actually leverage for students to make sense of all these crazy, crazy things that us as teachers need to convey to them. Okay, so for example, in Ditch That Textbook, Matt Miller reframes the ways in which we can actually meaningfully integrate technology into our classrooms. And it kind of aligns with how Dave Burgess talks about these hooks. Okay, so the next example I'm going to show you is, instead of asking this and framing the question as, we're going to learn about quadratic functions today, ladies and gentlemen, instead of doing that, what Dan Myers does, who's another guy I'm going to talk about in a second, he does this.
Shot clock at 6. Curry behind his back from out the side of the dot. Up to Moby. Trying the rack. For Saul. Just like that, on the 360.
So this is an example of saying, instead of quadratic equations, let's talk about basketball. Let's take a connection between a real-world application problem, basketball, and turn it into something that gets students potentially engaged and more wanting to know more about this, to pique their intellectual curiosity. Dan Meyer, that was an example of something called a 3-act task in the math world, and Dan Meyer creates these video prompts. Basically, you display the video and it elicits, it provokes a lot of ways for students to think about a problem and potentially make connections between the real world and mathematics. Okay, Dan Meyer once said, I teach high school math. I sell a product to a market, to our students, that doesn't want it, but they are forced by law to buy it. That was an interesting way to frame the way that I was a math teacher, and I'm like, wow, okay, I see how this relates here. Because if you market this idea of quadratic equations, that's not a big selling point. But if you talk about cannonballs, and if you talk about basketballs, and any kind of thing that makes a trajectory of a wonderful quadratic equation, now we're talking. Okay? So, in regards to these hooks, Dave Burgess talks about weird ways of changing up the performance of your classroom to provide hooks in a way that engages the learner to want to know more, to keep coming back. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm talking an experience of which they are involved in a classroom, so much so that 20 years from now, when they have kids in their high school or in a high school, they're talking about a lesson that Mr. Miller has done 20 years ago. Like, that powerful. That's what I mean by creating an environment where students want to come back for more. They're so hooked. They're so interested in, wow, there's something crazy that's going to happen next class. I can't miss it. And then Matt Miller takes it a step further and takes one of these hooks and pairs it up with some way of which we can meaningfully incorporate technology. For instance, we have teachers here that are using Kahoot to create a contest. Okay, Kahoot's like a digital platform. It's kind of like gamifying your classroom. Okay, students talk about Kahoot. Another way is where students can create their own flipped video. They can create the instructional content and have their wonderful peers look it over as well. So the question now is, like, how can we reimagine the classrooms across the nation for the betterment of our students? That's the big question. I would actually like to get back to this, right? When they can walk into a classroom and have the whole experience, have the steak, have the sides, have the fixings. Okay, what I mean by seasoning the steak, I'm talking about thinking more critically about the ways in which you plan your activities as a teacher. What I mean by the fixings, being able to provide alternative activities, giving students voice and choice over the matter. Meaning, hey, I know you might not like to write papers all the time, so maybe I'm going to give you an option. Maybe there's a way that you can convey this content in a rap song. Or maybe you can convey this content in a way that makes sense to you in not just a rap song, but maybe you want to create a poem. Or maybe you want to create a music video. Okay, providing opportunities with choice, students with choice, that's a powerful thing. I wonder what a classroom could look like if we had a lot of these elements in there. And we are seeing it, we're seeing it in pockets. Again, here in this district, we're seeing it in pockets across the state of Rhode Island, across the nation. There are some innovative things happening in our classrooms. I'm very proud to say that I had an opportunity to visit 30+ school districts around the state of Rhode Island and our neighboring states, and I've seen amazing things happening. So I know it can happen. And I don't believe in such a thing as like a reluctant teacher, someone that's resistant to all of this. I do think teachers need opportunities to be more convinced, to be able to see all this stuff happening in the classroom, see it in action. Go and visit. Go and visit one of their colleagues across the state. Having opportunities to see this happening, to see how students are not just engaged in the work that they're doing, but feel a sense of empowerment. It brings them a more critical way of looking at the world, and not only just reading the world of which we want to convey to them, but also letting them write the world in which they want to live in tomorrow. I think that's an important thing, and that's what I mean by empowerment. So, Albert Einstein is talking about bringing and awakening this joy in creative expression and knowledge. So, I'm also thinking, how can we rehumanize these classrooms? Bringing back an understanding that our students have thoughts, feelings, emotions. They have their own interests, okay? If I'm gonna serve them a steak and they're not into steak, I gotta think of something alternatively to do with these students. We wanna give them opportunities to flourish in our classrooms. And I truly think one way of which is to integrate technology meaningfully in the classroom, but more so, just giving them more voice and choice in the matters of which they want to convey their knowledge. And we're going to have a wonderful, wonderful future for many of our students, and that's an important thing to know.